Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in faith, today I want to speak to your hearts about a truth that can change the way we live, breathe, and hope. God's timing is perfect. Life often feels like a race against time. We plan, we struggle, and sometimes we worry. We see others succeeding while we feel stuck, and we ask, why not me? Why now? But I want to remind you today that God is never late, and He is never early. He is always on time. Every season of your life, every challenge, every blessing, and every heartbreak is orchestrated by a loving God who knows exactly what is best for you. You may have prayed for years, but His answer comes exactly when it aligns with His perfect plan for your life. You may feel delays, but those delays are divine preparations. You may see closed doors, but God is opening the doors that you can't even imagine. When you understand that God's timing is perfect, impatience turns into trust, anxiety turns into peace, and fear turns into faith. You begin to see that every wait is not wasted. Every moment of silence is not empty. Every delay is not denial. Many times in life, we feel like God is delaying, like our prayers are going unheard, or like the opportunities we've been praying for will never come. We see others moving ahead, achieving milestones or receiving blessings that we've been longing for, and we ask ourselves, why not me? Why now? It is in these moments of doubt and impatience that we must remind ourselves of a fundamental truth: God is never late. God's timing is not bound by the limitations of human understanding. While we measure time in days, months, or years, God sees the entirety of our life in a single sweep. He knows the perfect moment when everything aligns for our highest good. The delay that seems unbearable from our perspective may be the exact moment God has chosen to bring about a miracle, a breakthrough, or a turning point that will exceed anything we could imagine. Think about the stories in the Bible. Abraham waited decades for the promise of a son. Joseph endured years in prison before ascending to a position of influence, and David was anointed as king long before he actually ruled Israel. In every case, the waiting was not wasted. It was preparation. God knew the precise moment when their blessings should arrive, and it was a perfect time that matched His divine plan. When we recognize that God is never late, our perspective shifts. We stop worrying, and start trusting. We begin to see delays not as disappointments, but as opportunities for growth, refinement, and divine orchestration. Every moment of waiting becomes a reminder that God is working behind the scenes, arranging circumstances, aligning people, and setting the stage for blessings far greater than we could have planned on our own. God's timing also teaches patience and perseverance. When we believe that He is never late, we learn to hold on with faith instead of giving up in despair. We start to embrace the waiting season, knowing that when the moment arrives, it will be perfect, complete, and life-changing. Even if the answer seems delayed, it will come in the fullness of time, exactly when we need it most. Trusting that God is never late allows us to surrender control. It reminds us that we don't need to force doors open, chase after opportunities, or manipulate circumstances. Instead, we can step back, have faith, and watch God work in ways that are far beyond our understanding. Our impatience may prompt mistakes, but His timing is flawless, precise, and always for our good. When we truly internalize this truth, we experience a peace that the world cannot give. We stop comparing our timeline with others. We stop measuring our progress by human standards, and we begin to walk confidently, knowing that God is orchestrating every detail in our lives with perfect precision. One of the most challenging aspects of faith is learning to trust God even when we do not understand what He is doing. Life often presents us with situations that are confusing, painful, or seemingly unfair. We ask questions: why is this happening? Why now? Why me? In these moments, our human desire is to seek understanding, to have clear answers, a roadmap, or an explanation that makes sense to us. But the truth is, God asks us to place trust over understanding. Trusting over understanding means accepting that we do not see the full picture, but we believe in the one who does. It means believing that God's wisdom surpasses our limited perspective. What may seem like a delay, a closed door, or an unanswered prayer is, in God's eyes, part of a perfect plan that we cannot yet comprehend. When we insist on understanding first, we risk missing the beauty of what God is orchestrating behind the scenes. Consider the story of the Israelites during their journey in the wilderness. They didn't understand why they wandered for 40 years, why God allowed challenges, or why their promised land seemed so far away. Yet every day in the desert was carefully planned to teach lessons, to develop patience, obedience, and faith. The Israelites had to trust God's plan without full understanding, and their trust was ultimately rewarded. Trusting over understanding requires surrender. It asks us to release our need to control every outcome, to stop demanding explanations, and to step into faith. It is not passive resignation. It is active belief that God is at work even when we cannot see it. It is knowing in our hearts that His timing, His ways, and His wisdom are always superior to ours. When we prioritize trust over understanding, we also free ourselves from unnecessary worry and anxiety. We stop overthinking, second-guessing, and questioning God's decisions at every turn. We begin to walk in peace, knowing that He is leading us step by step. Trust becomes the anchor that steadies us during storms, the light that guides us through darkness, and the assurance that nothing is wasted, even when we cannot make sense of it. Think about Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his own brothers. From a human perspective, this seemed like betrayal and injustice. He could have chosen anger, despair, or bitterness, but Joseph trusted God even without understanding why this was happening. Years later, he rose to a position of influence, saving nations from famine. His trust overrode his need to understand, and it positioned him for God's perfect plan. Trust over understanding also deepens our relationship with God. It shifts our focus from asking why to affirming, you know best. Every moment we choose trust over understanding strengthens our faith, strengthens our character, and aligns our hearts with God's will. When we embrace this principle, life becomes less about forcing answers and more about walking with God step by step in obedience and faith. Trust over understanding allows us to see every situation as part of a divine story where every delay, every trial, and every blessing is perfectly timed and perfectly orchestrated by God, who loves us more than we can comprehend. Patience is one of the most underrated virtues in life, yet it is one of the most powerful tools God uses to prepare us for His perfect timing. When we wait on God, when we endure challenges without giving up, and when we resist the urge to rush our destiny, we are cultivating strength. Strength of character, strength of faith, and strength of spirit. Patience is not merely a passive act of waiting. It is an active form of trust and resilience that shapes who we are and equips us for what lies ahead. Life will test your patience in countless ways. You may face delays in your career, unanswered prayers in your relationships, or setbacks in your personal goals. These moments are not meant to defeat you. They are opportunities to build strength. Just as a muscle grows stronger through resistance, your character grows stronger through patience. Each trial, each moment of waiting is a weight lifted in the gym of life, preparing you for greater responsibilities and greater blessings. Biblical stories illustrate this principle beautifully. Consider Job, a man who endured unimaginable suffering, loss, and injustice. Despite everything, he did not curse God or abandon his faith. Job's patience during his trials forged an unshakable strength, a spiritual fortitude that allowed him not only to endure suffering, but to emerge victorious and blessed beyond measure. Patience produces this kind of inner strength that no adversity can break. Patience also cultivates emotional and mental resilience. When we learn to wait on God without complaining or becoming frustrated, we train our minds to remain calm in chaos and our hearts to remain steadfast in uncertainty. Strength born of patience allows us to face storms without fear, disappointments without despair, and challenges without losing hope. It equips us to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively, to act in faith instead of panic, and to move in alignment with God's plan instead of forcing our own. Another important aspect of patience is that it teaches us perseverance. Strength is not developed overnight, it is built over time. God's timing is intentional, and He uses waiting periods to ensure that we are ready for the blessings that are coming. Every delay is a practice in endurance. Every period of waiting is a chance to develop perseverance. And every challenge is a training ground for the strength required to walk in His promises. Patience also produces spiritual maturity. When we wait faithfully, we begin to rely less on our own understanding and more on God's wisdom. We learn humility, dependence, and trust. Strength is not just physical or mental, it is spiritual, rooted in the ability to stand firm when the world around us is shaking. Patience nurtures this spiritual strength by teaching us to trust the unseen, believe the impossible, and hope when circumstances seem hopeless. Moreover, patience produces endurance that will sustain us for a lifetime. Life is not a sprint, it is a marathon. A strength built through patience enables us to run our race without losing heart, without giving up at the first sign of difficulty, and without being tempted to take shortcuts that could derail our destiny. It equips us to wait for the perfect timing of God's plan, and knowing what is worth having is worth waiting for. Finally, patience produces a quiet confidence. When you know that God's timing is perfect and that waiting is part of the process, you begin to walk with a sense of calm authority. You are no longer controlled by fear, anxiety, or impatience. Instead, your strength born from patience, anchor for His why. At times, we interpret delays as disappointments or setbacks. We become frustrated when things don't happen according to our plans or on our personal timeline. We may feel like life is against us or that God has forgotten our prayers. But the truth is far more comforting. Delays are not denials. They are divine redirections. God's timing is perfect, and sometimes what seems like a delay is actually Him guiding us away from danger, missteps, or missed opportunities towards something far better than we could have imagined. Think about it this way. In life, not every open door is meant for you, and not every path you choose will lead to blessing. If you rush into things or insist on following your own timing, you may encounter obstacles, heart attached, or consequences that could have been avoided. God, in His infinite wisdom, uses delays to redirect you. He closes certain doors so that He can open doors that are perfectly aligned with your purpose, your destiny, and your ultimate good. The story of Joseph is a powerful example of this principle. Joseph was sold into slavery by his own brothers, a situation that seemed like betrayal and misfortune. Yet God used that delay to position him in Egypt, where he eventually rose to become second in command and saved countless lives during a famine. What appeared to be a setback was, in reality, a divine redirection. The delay was a necessary detour that placed Joseph exactly where God intended him to be. Divine redirection is also evident in our daily lives. Sometimes we pray for a job or an opportunity, and the answer seems delayed. Instead of seeing this as rejection, we should ask ourselves whether God is redirecting us to something better. Maybe the job we desire is not the right fit. The relationship we long for is not aligned with our best future, or the opportunity we chase is premature. God's delays ensure that we are guided toward what is truly right, safe, and beneficial for our lives. Delays as divine redirections also teach us discernment. When we face waiting periods, we learn to differentiate between what we want and what we truly need. We develop the ability to trust God's guidance, even when it contradicts our own desires or expectations. These periods of waiting allow us to refine our understanding of God's will, helping us make choices that align with His perfect plan. Moreover, a divine redirection often brings hidden blessings that we would never have discovered if things had happened according to our timeline. The detours, delays, and unexpected changes in direction may introduce us to people, opportunities, or experiences that transform our lives. What initially feels like a delay may actually be a blessing in disguise, carefully orchestrated by God to ensure our growth, protection, and ultimate success. It is also important to remember that divine redirection requires trust. We may not see why certain doors remain closed or why certain plans are postponed, but trusting God means believing that He is leading us towards something far greater than we can comprehend. Every delay, every detour, and every moment of waiting is part of a careful, intentional design that aligns perfectly with His will. When we embrace the truth that delays are divine redirections, we shift our mindset from frustration to faith, from doubt to hope, and from impatience to peace. We stop fighting the current of God's plan and instead flow with it, knowing that He is leading us to exactly where we are meant to be. In life, waiting often feels uncomfortable. It can feel heavy, frustrating, and even unfair. We pray, we hope, we work hard, and yet the answers we long for don't come immediately. In those moments, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that God is punishing us, that He has forgotten us, or that we are somehow failing. But the truth is far from this. Waiting is not a punishment, it is a season. A season is a period of growth, transformation, and preparation. Just as the earth has seasons, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, our lives have seasons too. Each one has a purpose. Waiting is one of these seasons, and it is one of the most important. It is in the waiting that God works quietly behind the scenes, shaping us, molding us, and equipping us for the blessings He has prepared. Think about a seed. When a farmer plants a seed, it doesn't sprout immediately. It lies hidden beneath the soil, unseen, and yet life is happening. The roots are growing deep, the plant is developing strength, and preparation for growth is underway. If we pulled the seed out too early, it would never reach its full potential. In the same way, God uses periods of waiting to strengthen our roots and to build our character and to prepare us for what is coming. Waiting teaches us humility. It reminds us that we are not in control and that our plans alone are not enough. It humbles us and draws us closer to God, showing us our dependence on His wisdom and timing. When we embrace waiting as a season rather than a punishment, we begin to see that every moment of delay has a divine purpose. It is also in the waiting that faith is tested and strengthened. Patience is born not when things happen immediately, but when we trust God despite the silence, despite the delay, and despite the uncertainty. Waiting challenges us to hold on to hope, to continue praying, and to keep believing that God is still at work even when we cannot see the outcome. Many of the greatest stories of triumph in the Bible were preceded by long periods of waiting. Joseph waited years in a prison he did not deserve. Moses waited decades before leading a nation, and Hannah waited patiently for a child. Each of them experienced waiting not as punishment, but as preparation for God's perfect plan. Understanding that waiting is a season helps us to reframe our perspective. It turns frustration into anticipation, despair into expectation, and impatience into trust. Waiting is not wasted time, it is sacred time, a period in which God is aligning circumstances, developing our character, and preparing our hearts for the blessings that are to come. When we accept waiting as a season, we stop feeling burdened by it. Instead, we learn to live fully in the present, to cultivate gratitude for the lessons learned, and to trust that God's timing is always working toward our ultimate good. Waiting becomes an invitation to grow deeper in faith, to strengthen our patience, and to witness firsthand how God's hand moves even when we cannot see. One of the greatest traps we can fall into on our journey of faith is the habit of comparing ourselves to others. It is so easy to look at the lives of friends, colleagues, or even strangers and feel inadequate, behind, or overlooked. We see their achievements, their blessings, their milestones, and we ask, why not me? Why is their life moving faster than mine? But comparison is not only dangerous, it is the enemy of faith. When we compare, we focus on the wrong timeline. God's plan for each of us is unique, perfect, tailored to our purpose, abilities, and destiny. Your journey is not the same as anyone else's, and it will not follow the same schedule. By measuring your life against someone else's, you rob yourself of peace, patience, and trust in God's timing. Comparison distracts you from your path and blinds you to the blessings, the opportunities that are unfolding in your own life. And consider the story of the prodigal son's older brother. While the younger son went through a season of rebellion and then received abundant forgiveness and celebration, the older brother focused on comparison. He measured his life against his siblings' experience and allowed jealousy and bitterness to take root. He could not see that God's timing and plan were perfect for both of them, even if it unfolded differently. Comparison blinded him to God's goodness. Comparison also breeds impatience. When we constantly look at others and wonder why their lives seem easier, faster, or more successful, we lose sight of the faithfulness of God in our own lives. We begin to demand outcomes on our timetable rather than trusting God's divine timing. We forget that what we see on the outside is only part of the story, and that God is orchestrating our lives in ways we cannot yet understand. Furthermore, comparison diminishes gratitude. When we focus on what others have, we overlook what God has already given us. Every blessing, every opportunity, every moment of growth is part of God's perfect plan for our lives. By comparing, we shift our attention away from gratitude and toward envy, which weakens our faith and diminishes our joy. Comparison is also dangerous because it encourages doubt. We start questioning whether God loves us, whether He hears our prayers, or whether we are on the right path. The truth is that God is faithful and His timing is perfect. Your purpose, your blessings, and your journey are uniquely designed for you. No one else's pace or season should dictate your faith or your trust in God. Faith thrives in focus, not comparison. When we stop measuring ourselves against others, we can focus on growing in our relationship with God, walking faithfully in our own calling, and waiting patiently for His perfect timing. We can celebrate others' successes without resentment, and knowing that God's plan for them does not diminish His plan for us. Remember, the caterpillar does not worry about the butterfly next to it. It focuses on its own process of transformation, knowing that in God's perfect timing, it too will emerge beautifully. Comparison steals that focus and interrupts our process. Faith grows strongest when we trust God's timing for ourselves and resist the temptation to measure our journey against anyone else's. When we embrace the truth that comparison is the enemy of faith, we reclaim peace, patience, and purpose. We learn to celebrate God's work in our lives and in the lives of others without judgment or envy. We begin to walk confidently, trusting that our season, our timing, and our blessings are perfectly orchestrated by a God who knows exactly what we need and when we need it. A life is made up of seasons, times of planting, waiting, growth, harvest, and even rest. Each season carries a specific purpose, and understanding this truth can transform the way we face challenges, delays, and uncertainties. God's timing is perfect, and He allows each season in our lives to serve a divine purpose, preparing us for what is to come. Recognizing that every season has a purpose helps us to stop resisting, start learning, and embrace the journey with faith and gratitude. Many of us struggle during difficult seasons. We wonder why hardship has come, why our prayers seem unanswered, or why our efforts don't yield immediate results. Yet these very seasons are often the ones that build resilience, shape our character, and draw us closer to God. Just as winter may feel harsh, it is necessary for the earth to rest, heal, and prepare for the growth that comes in spring. Similarly, the seasons of waiting, difficulty, and challenge in our lives are not meaningless. They are preparing us for the blessings, opportunity, responsibilities that lie ahead. Consider the biblical example of Joseph. He endured seasons of betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment. Each of these seasons was challenging and confusing, but they had a purpose. During those years, Joseph developed wisdom, leadership, patience, and character. God used every season to prepare him for his ultimate destiny, to save nations from famine. Had Joseph rushed through or resisted the seasons he was in, he would not have been ready for the responsibilities that awaited him. Every season teaches us valuable lessons. The planting season teaches preparation, discipline, and investment. The waiting season teaches patience, perseverance, and trust. The growing season teaches diligence, endurance, and faith in action. The harvest season rewards our labor, discipline, and faithfulness. Even the resting seasons, which may feel unproductive, are moments of restoration, reflection, and divine alignment. When we embrace the purpose of each season, we discover that no time is wasted in God's perfect plan. Understanding that every season has a purpose also gives us perspective. When we face challenges, instead of asking, "Why is this happening?" we can ask, what is God trying to teach me in this season? This shift in perspective turns trials into opportunities for growth, delays into preparation, and uncertainties into divine training grounds. It reminds us that God is always working, even when we cannot see the immediate results. Seasons also prepare us spiritually. During times of trial, we learn to lean on God more deeply. During times of blessing, we learn gratitude and humility. Each season molds our hearts, teaches us faith, and strengthens our connection with God. By embracing the purpose of every season, we align ourselves with God's plan and position ourselves to receive His blessings fully and wisely. Another important aspect of recognizing seasons is the assurance it gives us. Life is a journey, not a single moment. Seasons are temporary, but their lessons are permanent. The difficulties we face today will pass, the waiting we endure will end, and the blessings God has promised will arrive in their perfect time. Each season is a step toward our destiny, carefully orchestrated by God to ensure that when the moment comes, we are ready to walk in with confidence, wisdom, and gratitude. When we fully grasp that every season has a purpose, we begin to surrender control over timing. We stop rushing, stop resisting, and stop fearing the unknown. Instead, we embrace the rhythm of life, trusting that God is leading us through each season with precision, love, and intention. No moment is wasted, no lesson overlooked, and no blessing delayed beyond its perfect time. One of the most comforting truths in our journey of faith is that God always hears our prayers. Every cry, every whisper, every plea from the depths of your heart reaches Him, even if it seems like silence follows. Sometimes it may feel as though our prayers go unanswered or that God is delaying His response, but we must remember His timing is perfect and His answers are always intentional. Prayers are never ignored. They are acknowledged, treasured, and often being prepared for the perfect moment to bring breakthrough, provision, or peace. It is natural to expect immediate results when we pray. We may pray for a job, a relationship, healing, or direction. And when the answer does not come right away, doubt can creep in. We ask, did God hear me? Did He forget me? But the truth is that God's response is not measured by our timeline. It is measured by His perfect wisdom. He knows the right time for every answer, and His delays are never neglect their divine preparation. Think of the story of Hannah in the Bible. She prayed earnestly for a child for many years, pouring her heart out before God in deep anguish. For a time, it seemed her prayers were unanswered, but she continued to trust. Eventually, God responded, blessing her with a son, Samuel, who became a prophet and a key instrument in God's plan. Hannah's prayers were never ignored. They were simply answered at the perfect time in alignment with God's greater purpose. When we understand that prayers are never ignored, it transforms the way we pray. We stop approaching God as if we need to convince Him or rush Him into action. Instead, we pray with faith, patience, and trust, knowing that our requests are already heard and are being orchestrated into His perfect plan. Our prayers are powerful not because they force change, but because they align our hearts with God's will and open the door for His divine intervention. Prayer also becomes a training ground for patience and perseverance. In waiting for answers, we develop spiritual strength, deepen our faith, and cultivate a heart that trusts God regardless of visible outcomes. Every unanswered prayer, every delay, and every period of silence is an opportunity to strengthen our connection with God and to learn to rely on Him more fully. Moreover, God sometimes answers prayers in ways we cannot immediately recognize. The response may differ from what we expected, but it is always perfect. Our vision is limited, but God's perspective is infinite. He sees not only the immediate need, but also the long-term impact, the growth required, and the lessons embedded in the journey. What we perceive as unanswered is often answered in a way that exceeds our understanding, waiting for the perfect time to reveal itself. Prayers are also never ignored because God is actively working behind the scenes. While we wait, He is orchestrating circumstances, aligning people, and preparing opportunities that correspond to our requests. Sometimes the delay itself is part of the answer, shaping us to receive the blessing in fullness and ensuring that it will have lasting impact. Finally, understanding that prayers are never ignored fills us with hope and encouragement. It allows us to remain faithful, to continue seeking God, and to trust that every heartfelt prayer is part of a divine conversation that matters deeply to Him. When we combine prayer with patience and faith in God's timing, we tap into the incredible power of God's plan, a plan in which nothing is forgotten, nothing wasted, and nothing ignored. One of the most remarkable truths about God is that His timing often defies human logic. We live by calendars, deadlines, and schedules, measuring life in hours, days, and years. But God operates outside the constraints of time. What seems impossible, delayed, or illogical to us is often perfectly orchestrated in His divine plan. His timing is not random, it is intentional, precise, and always for our ultimate good. Human logic often tells us that things should happen quickly. When we pray for a break, promotion, healing, or guidance, we expect an immediate response. When it does not come, frustration sets in. We may even question our faith, wondering why God seems silent or why others appear to receive their blessings faster. But God's timing is never dictated by urgency. It is dictated by wisdom. He knows exactly when and how the right moment will bring maximum impact. Consider the story of Abraham and Sarah. They waited decades for the promised child, Isaac. From a human perspective, their waiting was unreasonable. They were advanced in age, and logic would have said it was impossible. Yet God's timing was perfect. Waiting those years allowed their faith to mature, their trust to deepen, and their hearts to be fully prepared for the miracle that would forever shape generations. God's timing defied human understanding, yet it produced results that exceeded all human expectation. God's timing also teaches us humility. We may plan, strategize, and work tirelessly toward a goal, but He reminds us that our understanding is limited. Sometimes the detours, delays, and unexpected turns are necessary to align us with the perfect outcome. What seems like a setback is often preparation. What seems like a denial is often protection. What seems delayed is actually the precise moment for a miracle to unfold. Miracles often arrive at the moment we least expect them. If we acted according to human logic, we might rush into situations, prematurely make hasty decisions, or accept opportunities that seem good but are not God's best. By waiting for God's timing, we align ourselves with outcomes that are not just good, they are extraordinary. His timing ensures that blessings, solutions, and opportunities arrive when we are ready to receive them fully. This principle also extends to relationships, careers, and personal growth. You may meet the right person, receive the right job offer, or experience the right breakthrough at a time that seems too late or too soon. Yeah, in retrospect, it becomes clear that the timing was perfect. God's timing ensures that everything unfolds in a way that supports your growth, your purpose, and your destiny. Trusting God's timing over human logic requires faith. It requires believing that what we cannot see or understand is already being orchestrated in our favor. It requires surrendering control, letting go of impatience, and embracing uncertainty with confidence that God is working behind the scenes. Faith allows us to rest even when circumstances defy explanation, knowing that His timing is flawless and His wisdom surpasses all understanding. When we fully grasp that God's timing defies human logic, we stop trying to force outcomes and stop judging delays through the lens of our limited perspective. We begin to see life as a tapestry woven with precision, where every thread, every delay, and every detour has a purpose. We walk with confidence, peace, and hope, knowing that our lives are in the hands of a God whose timing is perfect, even when it seems mysterious or unconventional to us. One of the most important truths about life and faith is that growth often comes in the wait. Waiting can feel uncomfortable, frustrating, or even discouraging, but it is during these seasons that God works most powerfully to shape us into the people He has called us to be. While we may be focused on the destination, God is always focused on the preparation, on building our character, deepening our faith, and strengthening our hearts so that we are ready for the blessings He has promised. Waiting was not wasted time. It is a sacred season of growth. Just as a seed must remain in the soil before it can sprout, grow, and bear fruit, we too must spend time in preparation before stepping into our full purpose. The wait may feel long, the challenges may seem endless, but every moment is an opportunity for spiritual, emotional, and personal growth. Consider Joseph, who was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and imprisoned unjustly. From a human perspective, it seemed though he was being punished or forgotten. But in truth, Joseph was growing. His patience, faith, and wisdom were being refined in the wait. By the time he was elevated to a position of leadership in Egypt, he had the character, insight, and spiritual depth necessary to save nations from famine. His growth during the wait prepared him for a destiny far greater than he could have imagined. Growth in the wait also builds resilience. Life is full of unexpected twists, delays, and trials, and it is through these experiences that we learn to endure. Every delay challenges us to persevere, to hold on to hope, and to continue trusting God even when circumstances seem discouraging. The skills, wisdom, and spiritual maturity developed during waiting periods equip us to handle future challenges with strength and confidence. Waiting also teaches humility. It reminds us that we are not in control and that our understanding is limited. We cannot force timing, manipulate circumstances, or create miracles through our own effort alone. Growth comes when we surrender control, lean fully on God, and trust that He is working behind the scenes to orchestrate everything perfectly. Furthermore, growth often comes in the wait because it is a time of reflection and self-discovery. In periods of waiting, we are encouraged to examine our hearts, confront our weaknesses, and develop the qualities that will serve us in the seasons ahead. Patience, endurance, wisdom, and gratitude are cultivated when we wait faithfully, and these qualities cannot be rushed. They are formed slowly, steadily, and purposefully in alignment with God's plan. Even the trials we face during waiting periods serve as instruments of growth. Challenges, setbacks, and disappointments are not meant to defeat us. They are meant to refine us. Like gold being purified by fire, we emerge from the wait stronger, wiser, and better equipped to handle the responsibilities and blessings that await us. Growth in the wait also strengthens faith. When we continue to trust God despite the silence, despite the delays, and despite the uncertainty, we build confidence in His promises. We learn that God's plans are trustworthy, His timing is perfect, and His love is unfailing. Our spiritual roots grow deeper, and our reliance on Him becomes unshakable. Finally, growth in the wait produces preparation for purpose. God's blessings, opportunities, and breakthroughs are most impactful when we are ready to receive them. The waiting period ensures that we are equipped emotionally, spiritually, and mentally to step into the fullness of what God has planned for us. Growth in the wait is not just about surviving. It is about becoming the person capable of walking into God's perfect timing with strength, faith, and readiness. One of the most important truths we can embrace in life is that the right time is always worth the wait. Too often, we allow impatience to drive our decisions, pushing us to settle for what is convenient, immediate, or seemingly available, rather than trusting that God's timing will bring the best possible outcome. God's timing is perfect, and what He has prepared for us is always worth waiting for, even if the wait feels long, uncertain, or challenging. Life often tempts us to rush. We see others achieving goals, receiving opportunities, or reaching milestones. And we want the same, often without considering whether the timing is right for us. But blessings, success, relationships, and opportunities that come too soon or too early may not be fully beneficial. They may be incomplete, temporary, or even harmful. God's timing ensures that what arrives in our lives is perfect in every detail, complete, and prepared to create lasting impact. Consider the story of Ruth. She waited patiently through years of hardship and uncertainty before God brought Boaz into her life. Had she rushed into a relationship or pursued her own plans, she may have missed the blessing that was perfectly designed for her. The wait refined her character, strengthened her faith, and prepared her heart for a love that aligned with God's plan. The right time, though delayed, was worth every moment of patience, every challenge endured, and every moment of trust. Waiting for the right time also prevents unnecessary mistakes and regrets. When we settle for good enough or try to force things ahead of God's schedule, we often encounter complications, disappointment, or even heart attacks. God's timing protects us from these missteps. By waiting, we allow Him to orchestrate everything perfectly. Every encounter, every opportunity, and every blessing. What He has prepared for us is not just adequate, it is extraordinary, life-changing, and transformative. The right time also allows for full preparation. God uses periods of waiting to equip us mentally, spiritually, and emotionally to receive what He has in store. When the right time comes, we are not only ready to accept it, but also ready to maximize its impact. Every lesson learned, every challenge endured, and every moment of growth during the wait becomes a part of the preparation that ensures the blessing has its full effect in our lives. Faith plays a crucial role in waiting for the right time. It is easy to become impatient, frustrated, or doubtful during delays. But faith allows us to hold on, trusting that the timing of God is precise. When we remain steadfast, we experience the fulfillment of promises in ways that exceed our expectations. The wait becomes a test of endurance, a refinement of character, and a demonstration of unwavering trust in God's plan. Furthermore, the right time brings alignment with God's greater purpose. Sometimes we may desire something before we are ready or before it aligns with His larger plan for our lives. God's timing ensures that blessings arrive in alignment with His will, creating harmony in our life, relationships, and destiny. When we receive things at the right time, every aspect of our life benefits, and the blessing is sustainable, meaningful, and fully impactful. Finally, understanding that the right time is worth the wait gives us hope, peace, and confidence. We no longer rush, panic, or compare our journey to others. Instead, we rest in the assurance that God's timing is flawless and that when the moment comes, it will be perfect, bringing joy, fulfillment, and blessings beyond what we could have imagined. Waiting becomes not a burden, but a privilege, a sacred opportunity to trust, grow, and prepare for the extraordinary life God has in store. Many of us see patience as merely waiting, something passive, tedious, or even frustrating. But the truth is that patience is one of the highest forms of worship we can offer to God. When we wait faithfully, trusting in His timing rather than demanding immediate answers, we are demonstrating obedience, reverence, and submission to His perfect will. Patience is not just about enduring delays. It is about honoring God by acknowledging that His plan is greater than our own. Worship is an expression of trust and love, and patience embodies both. When we are patient, we are saying, Lord, I trust you. I believe your plan is perfect. I will not rush. I will not panic. I will not doubt. Every moment of calm endurance in the face of uncertainty is a spiritual act of surrender. A declaration that God's timing is flawless and that his wisdom surpasses our understanding. In this way, patience becomes more than a virtue. It becomes a sacred form of praise. Consider the story of David before he became king. He was anointed at a young age, yet he did not ascend to the throne immediately. He faced years of waiting, rejection, and persecution. Instead of taking matters into his own hands, David demonstrated patience. He honored God by trusting his timing, and as a result, when David finally became king, he was fully prepared to lead with wisdom, integrity, and faith. His patience was not passive. It was a form of worship, a tangible acknowledgement of God's authority over his life. Patience as worship also involves resisting the temptation to complain or doubt. In seasons of waiting, it is easy to become frustrated, discouraged, or anxious. Yet true worship through patience means holding on to faith, keeping our hearts focused on God, and remaining steadfast even when circumstances seem contrary. It is a spiritual discipline, a way of aligning our hearts with God's will, and a demonstration that we believe in his goodness even when we cannot see the outcome. Furthermore, patience honors God because it recognizes his sovereignty. When we try to rush outcomes or manipulate circumstances, we act as though we know better than God. Patience, on the other hand, acknowledges that he is in control and that his timing is perfect. It is a daily choice to submit our plans, desires, and expectations to him, trusting that he is orchestrating every detail for our ultimate good. Patience also deepens intimacy with God. While waiting, we are often drawn closer to him in prayer, reflection, and meditation. We learn to rely on his strength rather than our own, to seek his guidance rather than our own solutions, and to delight in his presence rather than merely chasing outcomes. Through patience, our relationship with God becomes stronger, more intimate, and more rooted in faith rather than mere circumstance. Additionally, patience as worship produces peace. When we honor God by waiting faithfully, we experience a deep sense of calm, knowing that we are aligned with his will. Anxiety, fear, and impatience lose their grip because we are resting in the assurance that God is working all things for our good. Worship through patience brings stability, confidence, and spiritual clarity that cannot be found anywhere else. Finally, patience as worship prepares us to receive God's blessings fully. When we rush or force things according to our own timing, we may miss the fullness of the gift or opportunity God has prepared. By patiently trusting him, we position ourselves to receive blessings at the perfect moment, complete, abundant, and life-changing. Waiting becomes more than endurance. It becomes an act of devotion, a spiritual posture that honors God and aligns us with his divine plan. One of the most beautiful truths about God's timing is that joy always comes in its due season. Life often presents challenges, delays, and seasons of waiting that test our patience, faith, and endurance. In these moments, it can be easy to focus on hardship, disappointment, or unmet expectations. But God has promised that joy will arrive, not according to our timetable, but according to his perfect timing. And when it comes, it is far more abundant, deep, and fulfilling than anything we could have orchestrated ourselves. Joy that comes in due season is different from temporary happiness. Happiness is fleeting, it depends on circumstances, and often fades with time. True joy, however, is rooted in God's plan. It is a fruit of faith, a reward for patience, and a reflection of his presence in our lives. When we wait for God's timing, the joy that comes is rich, lasting, and life-transforming. It fills our hearts in ways that no human achievement, material possession, or immediate success can replicate. The Bible is full of examples showing that joy is always perfectly timed. Consider the story of Hannah, who prayed for a child for many years. Her season of waiting was filled with pain, longing, and doubt, yet she never gave up. When God finally answered her prayer, the joy she experienced was overwhelming. Samuel's birth was not only a personal blessing, but a pivotal moment in God's plan for Israel. The joy Hannah received was perfectly timed, coming after a season of waiting and preparation. Joy in due season also teaches us gratitude and appreciation. When blessings arrive too quickly or without effort, we may take them for granted. But after a period of waiting, we understand the value of what God has done. The wait amplifies our gratitude, magnifies the blessing, and deepens our spiritual perspective. Every moment of longing, every challenge endured, and every prayer whispered makes the joy that follows more profound and meaningful. Furthermore, waiting for joy strengthens our faith. It requires trust and perseverance to hold on to hope even when circumstances seem bleak. By relying on God's timing, we develop a deeper intimacy with Him. We learn that He is faithful, His promises are true, and that joy, though delayed, is never denied. This faith transforms our character, molds our hearts, and prepares us to receive not just joy, but joy that aligns perfectly with God's purpose for our lives. Joy also arrives with divine timing to maximize its impact. If God were to give us what we want too early, we might not be ready to handle it responsibly. If it came without preparation, it could be wasted or misused. By waiting, God ensures that our joy is not only complete, but also sustainable and aligned with His greater plan. The delays, the trials, and the waiting periods are all part of preparing our hearts to receive joy in its fullness. Another beautiful aspect of joy in due season is its ability to encourage others. When we witness God's perfect timing in someone else's life, we are inspired to trust Him for our own journey. Our stories of waiting and eventual joy become testimonies of His faithfulness, giving hope to those around us who may be in their own seasons of waiting. Finally, understanding that joy comes in due season transforms our perspective on life. We no longer rush God, we no longer despair in delays, and we no longer compare our journey to others. Instead, we embrace each season with faith, knowing that every challenge, every pause, and every delay is preparing the way for joy that is not only deserved, but perfectly timed and deeply fulfilling. We learn to walk patiently, trusting that God's joy will arrive at the exact moment we are ready to receive it, and in ways that exceed anything we could imagine. One of the most powerful outcomes of embracing God's perfect timing is peace, a deep, abiding sense of calm that transcends circumstances, logic, and human understanding. Life is full of uncertainty, delays, and situations that can make our hearts restless. But when we choose to trust God completely and without reservation, we experience a peace that the world cannot give, a peace that stabilizes us even in the midst of storms. Trusting God is not always easy. Our natural tendency is to worry, to question, and to try to control the outcome of our lives. We want answers now, solutions today, and certainty in every moment. But God asks us to surrender our need for control, to place our confidence in His wisdom, and to trust that His timing is perfect. When we do this, peace begins to replace anxiety, fear, and frustration. Consider the story of Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel faced a situation that seemed hopeless and life-threatening, yet he trusted God completely. He did not panic, compromise his faith, or act impulsively. Because of his unwavering trust, Daniel experienced God's protection, and peace filled his heart even in the midst of danger. Trust in God allows us to walk through trials with the same confidence, knowing that He is in control and that nothing can happen outside of His divine plan. Trusting God also shifts our focus from the problem to the provider. When we obsess over delays, challenges, or unmet expectations, our hearts grow restless. But when we trust God, our attention moves to His character, His faithfulness, wisdom, and love. This shift brings peace because we realize that our circumstances do not dictate the outcome. God is working all things together for our good, even when we cannot see the full picture. Peace that comes from trusting God is not passive, it is active. It requires choosing faith over fear, patience over impatience, and surrender over control. Every time we resist anxiety and choose to trust God's timing, our faith grows stronger and our hearts experience a calm that transcends understanding. It is a peace that stabilizes us in the middle of chaos, strengthens us in moments of uncertainty, and reassures us that God's plan is flawless. Another powerful aspect of trusting God is that it protects our hearts from unnecessary stress and despair. When we try to rush things or force outcomes, we create frustration, disappointment, and emotional turmoil. But trust allows us to rest, knowing that God's timing is perfect and that His plan is designed for our ultimate good. By letting go and trusting Him, we free ourselves from the burden of controlling everything and instead walk confidently in the security of His wisdom. Trusting God also enhances our spiritual growth. The peace that comes from faith develops perseverance, patience, and resilience. It shapes our character, strengthens our relationship with Him, and teaches us to rely on His guidance rather than our own understanding. Every challenge we face becomes a stepping stone for deeper trust, and every delay becomes an opportunity to strengthen our faith. Finally, trusting God brings a lasting joy that complements peace. When we trust Him fully, we experience serenity in the present and hope for the future. We no longer live in fear of delays, uncertainty, or setbacks. Instead, we walk with confidence, knowing that God's timing is perfect, His plans are good, and His faithfulness is unwavering. Peace is the natural fruit of trust, a calm assurance that we are exactly where God wants us to be, and that everything He has promised will come to fruition in its perfect time. As we reflect on all we've explored today, one truth stands above all: God's timing is perfect. Every delay, every season of waiting, every unanswered prayer, every challenge, and every moment of uncertainty is carefully orchestrated by a loving God who sees the bigger picture, one that we cannot fully comprehend. Remember, He is never late. Waiting is not punishment, it is preparation. Delays are not denials, they are divine redirections. Every season has a purpose, every prayer is heard, and joy, peace, and blessings always arrive in their due time. Trusting Him through it all brings a peace that surpasses understanding, strengthens our faith, and prepares us for the fullness of life He has promised. So today, I encourage you to embrace the waiting. I encourage you to let go of impatience, comparison, and fear. Walk with faith, knowing that every moment, every pause, every challenge, every delay is shaping you, preparing you, and aligning you for a blessing that is perfectly timed. Hold on, hope, stand firm in trust. And remember, the God who holds time in His hands is working tirelessly on your behalf. Your breakthrough, your joy, your purpose, and your destiny are coming. Not a moment too soon and not a moment too late, but exactly when God has planned it. Trust His timing. Wait with faith. And get ready to receive the abundant, overflowing, life-changing blessings that He has prepared for you. Because when God acts, it is always perfect, it is always powerful, and it is always worth the wait.